Charleston White just stepped forward and gave King Harris a direct reality check for coming at 50 Cent, and the response is not what most people expected. White is firmly on 50's side, and King is the one catching all the heat. In this video, we're breaking down everything White said about King Harris and what it could mean for the young rapper going forward. The question at the center of this whole situation is actually straightforward. What happens when a man's son jumps into a decades-old beef, one built on snitch allegations, and drags a dead woman into it just to ride for his living mother? That is exactly what went down in February 2026. And it started the way most things in hip-hop do, with old smoke that never fully cleared. 50 Cent and T.I have had a problem with each other, going all the way back to 2007. That year, during a Hot 97 interview, 50 questioned anyone calling themselves the king of hip-hop. Everybody knew exactly who he was talking about. T.I had just dropped his 2006 album King and had crowned himself the king of the South. When 50 sat down with Angie Martinez and asked, "Who decides that the fans are the rapper?" T.I took it personally. And when 50 later pulled up to T.I.'s Scream Fest stage alongside Jay-Z and Kanye West, that same year, the tension had a face and a name. By 2008, T.I.'s federal gun case had wrapped up with a one-year sentence, a deal that had people across the country raising eyebrows, considering he was staring down potential decades. 50 Cent hopped on G-Unit's "You So Tough" and rapped about the math not adding up. 10 machine guns, 12 months. The bars were saying out loud what everyone in the hood was already whispering. Snitch. T.I never let that go. In September 2010, T.I and Tiny caught drug charges, possession resembling ecstasy. Tip did 11 months for violating parole. 50 Cent jumped online questioning why Tiny didn't take the fall for her man. T.I addressed it directly in a 2011 Vibe interview and shut every bit of it down. Said no one in his family was going to be pressured into catching a case for anybody, and that anyone suggesting otherwise was a straight-up coward. They eventually squashed it in late 2011 through a phone call set up by people in their mutual circle. 50 told Vibe neither of them asked for the call. It just happened through people they both trusted. For the next several years, it was quiet. The beef went dormant, but it never died. Then, in July 2020, on 50 Cent's 45th birthday, T.I called him out for a verzuz on Instagram. Told 50 to pull up with 20 records and get this work. 50 laughed it off, posting that somebody had passed Tip the same weed they gave Smokey and Friday. T.I kept pressing, went on. Hot 97 with Ebro said they were similarly stacked and claimed there was a 900-pound gorilla inside him. By September 2020, T.I was demanding a date, calling 50 a young baboon face, while 50 was trolling back about T.I.'s beard and asking where his trap museum exhibit was. They talked behind closed doors while moving around Los Angeles, doing shows together, but nothing ever came of it. 50 told The Morning Hustle in 2021 that once people got back outside, the whole verzuz format stopped making sense. T.I even pressed him on stage at the September 2021 BMF premiere afterparty, telling the crowd to put pressure on 50. 50 stood there, grinned, and did absolutely nothing. Then February 2026 pulled up. On February 6th, T.I hopped on the Nightcap podcast and brought the verzuz talk back, saying 50 was ducking smoke, said he originally wanted Gucci but switched to 50, and that 50 wasn't trying to get down. 50 slid back the next day by posting old Crime Stoppers footage and a clip of T.I.'s 2008 testimony from the Felony Johnson murder case, captioning it with a warning to keep his name out of conversations. He tagged T.I King Rat. By February 12th, after dropping a King Rat comment on a T.I and Kevin Hart video, T.I came back swinging, told 50 he had paperwork on him, called him soft, said he'd lost all respect. On February 22nd, T.I sat down on $1 million worth of game and aired everything out. Said they had already shook on a verzuz while doing shows in L.A., and 50 backed out. Said it made him question 50's entire character. That same day, 50 posted a photo of Tiny Harris on Instagram, telling T.I to stop saying his name. T.I hit the comments and said it didn't matter what picture he posted 50 was still beneath him. And then King Harris entered the picture. King T.I and Tiny's son, about 21 years old at the time, jumped on Instagram with an expletive-loaded rant going to bat for his mother. He brought up 50 Cent's mother, Sabrina Jackson, who passed away in 1983 when 50 was only 8 years old. King told 50 to go dig her up. He posted a tombstone image with the caption, "This where your mama at?" Said his mama was a legend, told 50 to put some respect on it, then reminded him that his own mother was in the ground. 50 Cent's mother's death, widely reported as tied to a drug overdose, is one of the most well-documented personal traumas in all of hip-hop. He has talked about it for decades, describing it as the event that shaped everything about how he moves and how he thinks. And now, a 21-year-old had turned it into an Instagram caption. Did King cross the line here? That night and the following day, T.I. dropped War, a warning shot about a hibernating bear that shouldn't have been poked, a sleeping giant that shouldn't have been woken. He followed with The Right One, questioning why 50 never had that same energy for white artists and only came for his own people. Then came Lessons, with artwork showing a skeletal 50 Cent from his All Things Fall Apart role. T.I.'s sons jumped in alongside him. Damani dropped Miss Jackson, flipping an Outkast sample with Burning House artwork, a whole open letter dressed up as a family statement. King dropped Say Less, a video where he rocked a shirt with 50 Cent's late mother's face printed on it and sparked a blunt pointed directly at the image, rapping about mama being in the grave. Rick Ross co-signed on site, commenting that he wanted King's shirt in a 3X, a very public stamp, from a man who had spent over a decade looking for every available shot at 50 Cent. And in that same stream, White went all the way in on what those traits actually signaled about King's trajectory, about his upbringing, and about the household that produced him. He went as far as calling T.I. tipster and Clifford deliberate, calculated choices designed to strip the rapper of his entire persona. His mythology, the whole King of the South aura. White also claimed he'd been rocking with 50 Cent and G-Unit behind the scenes for years, saying he had been placed in G-Unit songs and had been in direct contact with 5-0 privately. He described himself as a natural tag team partner in this situation, someone 50 could call on because the relationship was already built and solid. In live streams, he said flat out that he had been working with 50 Cent and was riding with him till the wheels fell off. Would you trust White in your corner? White was not just watching from the bleachers and calling plays from the sideline. He was actively campaigning for a spot on the active roster, openly telling 50 Cent to tag him in, like a wrestler on the apron, with his hand stretched all the way out, ready to go. He said 50 tried to activate against T.I. but couldn't get the job done. White believed he was the only person with the right tools, the right history, and the right level of reckless disregard to truly get under the Harris family's skin. And based on the volume of responses his posts were generating, he might not have been off base. But who exactly is Charleston White, and why does his voice carry real weight in a situation like this? White is a 8-year-old comedian, motivational speaker, and social media personality out of Fort Worth, Texas. At age 7, he lost his right eye in an accident, childhood trauma that shaped how he navigated the world from the very beginning. Around age 14, he was involved in a robbery at a Foot Locker in Arlington, Texas, that turned fatal when someone he was running with shot and killed a store clerk. White testified against the shooter and did time in juvenile facilities. He later earned a criminal justice degree from Texas Wesleyan University and co-founded Hype, a nonprofit built around mentoring at-risk youth and keeping them off the path that nearly consumed him. His entire brand is built on saying what nobody else has the nerve to say and saying it loud enough that it's impossible to ignore. He wears the snitch label from his juvenile testimony like a badge of honor, flipping it into a weapon he uses against rappers, street culture, and what he calls the rampant hypocrisy baked into the culture. A world that celebrates snitching when it's convenient and condemns it when it's not, depending entirely on who's talking and how many followers they have. He has caught charges for aggravated assault and animal cruelty. Charges he maintains were fabricated or acts of self-defense, adding yet another layer of contradiction to a persona that runs entirely on contradiction. In September 2025, he got run off the Tougaloo College campus after going in on HBCUs, dismissing racism, and calling students poor during a debate event that went sideways fast. His history with the Harris family goes back well before 2026. White has spoken about past diss songs involving T.I., alleged that T.I. once tried to physically confront him, and noted that T.I. called him a parasite publicly. When King threatened White in the past, White responded with the kind of statements that left zero room for interpretation. Was this beef always inevitable? This was not new smoke. It was old beef, loaded with fresh ammunition. White was talking about King's November 2023 blow-up at an Atlanta Falcons game, the moment that first put King's temper and defiance on full blast for the entire country to see. For White, King's 2026 rant was not some one-off explosion. It was the completely predictable outcome of a pattern T.I. had refused to address. A son who had been wilding for years without real consequences, shielded by fame and family money until the day he picked smoke with someone who genuinely did not care about any of that. A pattern of controversy. King Harris did not materialize out of nowhere for the 50 Cent confrontation. By February 2026, the 21-year-old had already stacked up a full highlight reel of public incidents that painted a very clear picture. A young man who was impulsive, fiercely loyal to his family, and still figuring out what it actually means to grow up as the son of one of Atlanta's most recognized names. The first major viral moment came in May 2022, when a 17-year-old King filmed himself on Instagram Live inside an Atlanta area Waffle House. It started over pickles on his order. When staff enforced a no-cursing policy after he complained, the situation went from 0 to 100 instantly. King climbed up on the counter, got in a worker's face, and threatened to pistol whip the employee before walking out with his corrected order in a viral clip that would shadow him for years to come. T.I. addressed it on his own Instagram Live, saying he and King's uncles had talked to him and were genuinely perplexed by the whole situation. He told his son to go enjoy his life and stop entertaining low-energy situations. Advice that, looking back, went completely unheeded. In August 2022, King caught charges in Pickens County speeding, driving on a suspended license, and DUI of drugs. He missed his court date and a bench warrant dropped. That warrant finally caught up to him in October 2024 when Dunwoody police pulled over his BMW after it nearly clipped a squad car pulling out of a gas station. Officers smelled weed and noticed a firearm holstered on his hip. He was booked into DeKalb County Jail on the outstanding warrant and released the following day after the warrant was recalled. The incident that most clearly foreshadowed the 50 Cent confrontation happened in November 2023 at an Atlanta Falcons game. King was live streaming from a suite when an argument broke out between him and his parents over how he had been raised. The core issue was raw. King rejecting the silver spoon label, insisting he spent most of his childhood at his grandmother's house in tougher conditions than anyone wanted to acknowledge. T.I. challenged him, asking if he had ever woken up with a roach on his face. Tiny explained the grandmother situation differently, saying King went there because he could get away with more, not because things were harder. The conversation turned physical. T.I. put King in a headlock while yelling that he was embarrassing himself and the family, the live stream capturing every single second. Brother Damani tried to smooth things over publicly afterward, calling it a misunderstanding and urging calm. T.I. posted about family unity, but the internet had already seen what it needed to see. The footage even sparked paternity rumors speculation that T.I. was not King's biological father, which Tiny shut down hard, calling it the biggest lie she had ever heard. Did T.I. fail his son here? White had watched all of this play out in real time and locked in his read immediately. King needed discipline, not a pat on the back. White's commentary on the Falcons incident had layers to it, though. He acknowledged King's pain while simultaneously calling out the entitlement he saw festering underneath it. Was White right about King? White told King directly through the camera that he was born into a life most kids from the hood would give anything to have. He was not raised in dangerous circumstances. He was not out here surviving the streets. He was living comfortable. And the anger he was performing for the internet was not standing on business, it was standing on entitlement. King also had a brief 2024 beef with comedian Drusky over the phrase standing on business, which King claimed he had made popular during the Falcons incident. He said he would pull up on Drusky after the comedian used it in a skit, turning a catchphrase argument into something that briefly looked like it could escalate. But it got resolved at Quavo's Huncho Day event, with Drusky confirming King actually showed up, and they handled it face-to-face. No drama, no residual smoke. In January 2025, King went viral talking about his open relationship with his son's mother, Jania Norris Epps, saying she did not mind him being with other women and telling people not to try to expose him for something his girl already knew about and was completely fine with. The comments split predictably. Some respected the honesty. Others saw it as reckless, oversharing from a young father who seemed to enjoy the attention more than the controversy itself. On a more serious note, in July 2025, longtime accuser Sabrina Peterson resurfaced trafficking and exploitation allegations, naming King alongside T.I and Tiny. Peterson claimed she had receipts, text messages, allegedly from King to a young woman she described as trafficked, but the family denied everything, calling it propaganda rooted in a personal vendetta dating back to 2021. No criminal charges have ever been filed. The family pursued defamation action against Peterson, and related civil suits saw dismissals, with Peterson ordered to pay roughly $97,000 in one ruling. The allegations remain unproven in court. All of that context matters because it fills in the complete picture of how King Harris walked into February 2026 carrying a very specific and well-established reputation. Passionate, impulsive, down for his family without question, and completely unafraid to take things further than anyone around him expected or wanted. Did anyone see February 2026 coming? 50's other wars. The T.I and King Harris situation did not happen in a vacuum. Throughout 2025 and into early 2026, 50 Cent was running a full war room of simultaneous beefs, all of them operating on his signature playbook: memes over music, surveillance footage over diss tracks, petty Instagram captions over lyrical bars. The Big Meech situation was rooted in betrayal more than competition. 50 had executive produced the Star series, BMF, starring Meech's son, Lil Meech, and had told the story of the Black Mafia family empire for the whole world to see. But after Big Meech came home from prison in early 2025, having served roughly 18 of his 3-0-year bid, and after his February 13th welcome home concert connected to Rick Ross, 50 started posting rap memes, old booking photos, and images referencing Tameka, a former BMF associate alleged to have cooperated with federal authority. He tagged Meech a slick rat and made incendiary claims about Lil Meech, saying he developed substance issues on the BMF set that required rehab. Meech kept it street, repeatedly posting death before dishonor, the code that defined BMF's entire legacy. The situation simmered through April 2025 and beyond, never fully erupting but never cooling down enough for anyone to turn away. Rick Ross slid into the conversation from multiple angles, each one sharper than the last. Their beef traces back to around 2009, rooted in what Tony Yayo described as a hospitality clash. 50 did not dap Ross up at an industry event, violating an unspoken Southern custom that Ross took as a deliberate act of disrespect. From one handshake that never happened, a decade-long war was built. In August 2025, Ross dropped a poolside video clowning 50's early Interscope deal, calling it horrendous and questioning why nobody in 50's camp ever thought to renegotiate after the debut went diamond, implying that the man who claimed to dominate the game had actually been played by it. Ross also connected himself to the Big Meech drama through concert cosigns and wove himself into the T.I. situation through his public endorsement of King Harris's diss track shirt, the one featuring 50 Cent's late mother's photograph printed on it. Ross asking for that shirt in a 3X was not just solidarity. It was a declaration of war, delivered with the casual menace of a man who had been waiting for exactly this opening. The Jim Jones situation was pure 50. Cent pettiness distilled to its most potent form: surveillance footage and eviction paperwork. In February 2026, 50 posted dated security camera video of Jones arriving at a locked Bronx podcast studio with Mano, Fabulous, and Dave East in tow, trying to kick open a door after the power had been cut for unpaid rent. The footage was grainy, embarrassing, and timed to absolute perfection. 50 shared the eviction notice addressed to Joseph Jones' government name, no stage name, maximum disrespect, and captioned the post asking if Jones wanted to be friends and suggesting they rap about the situation. He alleged the studio owed somewhere between $80,000 and $180,000 through his building management company, IFC Management. It was a beef, conducted entirely through real estate paperwork and landlord-tenant law, and somehow it landed harder than any diss track ever could. Getting evicted by your own landlord is a different type of L that no amount of bars will ever fix. And then there was Marquise Jackson, 50 Cent's own blood, whose estrangement has been one of hip-hop's most visible and most painful family fractures. Father's Day 2025 brought another round of pointed jabs from Marquise, clowning his father's absence and questioning whether the public image of a driven businessman matched the private reality of a man who had seemingly walked away from his firstborn. Throughout 2025 and into 2026, Marquise linked up with 50's opponents, spending time around Lil Meech and Big Meech's circle, which only amplified the public call-outs and handed 50's enemies another weapon to wave around. Their history includes the 2022 moment, where 50 offered $6,700 for 24 hours of quality time. With Marquise, a gesture read as either an olive branch or a calculated insult, depending entirely on which side of the estrangement you were standing on. For King Harris to weaponize motherhood and the grave against a man who had publicly fractured his relationship with his own child stacked an irony on top of this entire situation that the internet recognized immediately. What ties all of these beefs together? Meech, Ross, Jones, Marquise is 50 Cent's consistent, almost algorithmic approach to conflict. He does not respond with music. He responds with content. Memes, screenshots, old footage, eviction notices, doctored images, and strategically timed deletions that keep the conversation alive while denying his opponents the satisfaction of a direct engagement. His enemies drop diss track. He drops Instagram posts. And somehow, against all logic, he stays at the center of every single conversation without ever stepping near a microphone. Who do you think really won? The man turned trolling into a full empire. He does not even need to rap anymore. His phone is the weapon and the internet is the battlefield. That is the world the T.I. beef lives inside. 50 was already deployed across multiple fronts when T.I. brought the Verzeus talk back. And his response to King Harris memes, Pepe comparisons, childhood photo edits, and calculated silence was exactly how he was handling Meech, Ross, Jones, and his own son at the exact same time. He was not running from King. He was filing King under the same category as everyone else. Content to be managed. Not a threat worth addressing with anything more than a caption and a perfectly timed post. Fan reactions and T.I.'s album rollout. The internet did not sit on the sidelines for this one. It chose sides with the intensity of a courtroom that had already reached a verdict before opening arguments even started. Built memes that traveled faster than any diss track ever could. Tracked every release and every deletion with the obsessive precision of hip-hop war correspondents. And argued relentlessly, viciously, and sometimes brilliantly about exactly where the line sits between riding for your mother and disrespecting somebody's dead. Fan reactions split roughly 50-50. With each side so deeply entrenched that no amount of evidence from the opposing camp was changing a single mind. On X, High engagement posts about King's rant pulled in tens of thousands of interactions, comments ranging from passionate cosigns, with fans saying King showed more heart standing up for his mother than 50 had shown in decades of talking reckless on records, to fierce condemnation from people calling the grave references foul, disrespectful to the culture's unwritten rules about honoring the dead, and a line that simply cannot be uncrossed once you step over it. On Reddit, the discourse fractured into sub-arguments that each could have sustained their own week-long debate. Some argued that 50 had actually taken L after L in every beef outside of Ja Rule, propped up by Eminem and Dre during his peak in coasting on a carefully maintained illusion of dominance ever since. Others pointed out that 50's broken relationship with Marquise meant he had forfeited any moral claim to family being sacred when he had spent years publicly clowning his own son for the internet. Charleston White's involvement drew its own divided and fiercely contested reaction. His supporters saw unwavering consistency, a man who had always maintained that invoking the dead crosses a permanent line. His detractors saw selective outrage and transparent clout chasing, pointing out that White himself had been dragging Tiny Harris for years, without generating anywhere near the same level of backlash from the very same people now celebrating his moral stance. Rick Ross's cosign of King's diss track shirt, the one with 50 Cent's late mother's face on it, split fans between calling it real solidarity from someone who understood family loyalty at it gar, and calling it pure opportunism from a man who had his own decade-long list of reasons to wound 50 Cent, and would have co-signed anything that got the job done. Regardless of how sacred the imagery was, Ross's involvement also forced a question the culture could not avoid. Did that shirt merchandise featuring a dead woman's photograph, worn by the son of her son's enemy, represent a new low in beef culture, or simply the logical endpoint of a genre that has always turned personal pain into raw creative material?